our panelist Q&A. Thank you for everybody who submitted questions. Just one note for the panel. You may see a new face up there who did not present. Dr. Kifley had to leave. So I'd like to present Gerald Crottle. Gerald, you want to wave? Gerald's a public health nurse with 40 years of experience working in the county health department. Over the years, she had the opportunity to work closely with individuals and families impacted by hoarding. Her role often involved helping them connect with medical care, behavioral health services, and community resources. She has seen how complex and emotional these situations can be and believes strongly in offering support that's respectful, compassionate, and free of judgment, just like every public health nurse out there. So. And I promised her I wouldn't embarrass her, but I'm going to embarrass her a little bit. It's a little bittersweet and a little sad for me in the department to announce that Gerald will be retiring. Actually, tomorrow is her last day. So we will dearly miss her. Sorry. Everybody will dearly miss her, and we're happy to have her here today on the panel. So with that, I'm going to start. I tried to do my best really quick to group the questions. So I'm going to start with Brandon. There's a lot of questions, Brandon, around your organization and the structure and those types of things. I know you talked about it in your presentation, but in your experience, what type of services and supports, and especially on a broader scale, and some of the other panelists can probably speak to this as well. Obviously, there's a lot of questions about finances and grants and funding to help these situations and individuals who are struggling with hoarding disorder. What supports are out there, financially speaking, for them?
Well, we found one today, obviously, which I'm sure you guys are very happy to hear. When it comes to hoarding, it's a state-by-state, town-by-town initiative. I've worked with hoarding task forces that were incredibly successful, and I've worked with some that were still trying to figure it all out. I think it's the continuity, the consistency, persistence, and the dedication of the people that are involved in it. When it comes to funding, because of the complexity of hoarding, it goes from extreme to ultra extreme. I sit before you as a person who has seen every imaginable hoarding situation. And I've seen some that were, $300,000. And I've seen some that were $3,000, but ironically, the $3,000 hoarding situation was probably more difficult than the $300,000 because of the mental health element involved of it. So when it comes to funding and it comes to resources, I would check with your Council on Aging and see if they have a program involved. There are a lot of agencies and programs that do have government and state funding to see if they can give you the light and heavy chore. I've worked with a lot of these agencies. I'm under contract with a lot of them for the light and heavy chore. We at Lifecycle, we do payment plans. We understand that a lot of these clients are on low income, affordable housing, and they don't have the money. But they can't live in these situations and still suffer from it physically, mentally, and still think they're going to get out from under it. So each situation, I think, is a case-by-case scenario.
Thank you very much. It absolutely is. There's no one size fits all in these scenarios. So, and Tristan, off of that, anything else on the Medicaid side as we're talking about funding that you'd like to share?
Is this working? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I guess first, as I said before, the cleanup services are not yet an authorized benefit underneath the Housing Supports Program. However, when they are, and we are hopeful that they will be, but never say, it's not 100% anything for a variety of different reasons. We are hopeful that that will be a covered benefit. And if so, it would fit underneath the residential modifications or mediations benefit, which does have a cap on the amount that can be spent on cleanup and modifications. That applies for ramps, guardrails, mold, pest, and remediation. And that cap applies to all of those. So like if someone has a ramp, that will deduct from their overall cap for the other services. There are some nuances to the funding mechanism, and there is a lifetime cap associated with that benefit, which is a reality, and we're happy to talk about the nuances of how they each interplay with each other.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, one question we're getting a lot of, as we do with any presentation, will the PowerPoint slides be sent out? So that's a common question. The short answer is yes. We're working on that, but we hope to send out the slides so everybody can breathe a sigh of relief there. Next, let me see, where do I want to go next? Chris, we have a question on, can you briefly touch on squatters' rights and versus landlord-tenant contracts?
Sure. So, I didn't talk about it as much, mainly because we don't get as many of the cases, but in general, legally, there are two ways to remove someone. There's evictions and there's ejections. So squatters' rights only come up in the context of ejections. In a landlord-tenant situation, the tenant has a right to be there. A lease, you are giving that person the right to possess the property. They have a right to be there. They're not a squatter. And frequently, about half we don't get many ejections, and half the ejections that we get are actually landlord-tenants. But the landlord either doesn't understand or is trying to take advantage of the process by filing an ejection. And so the tenant kind of has to prove that they have a tenancy, or maybe there's an oral lease, it's not written down, but there's a history of rent transfers. So actual squatter cases are very, very rare. And the reason that they're rare is that New Jersey doesn't have, in common law, which is kind of the underpinning of our legal system, there's the context of something called adverse possession, which is basically people call squatters' rights. And it basically means if you've lived somewhere for long enough time and the person who owns it knows that you're there and they don't contest it for long enough time, you can eventually claim to yourself own the property. In New Jersey, there's no specific provision of law about that, which means that it reverts to the default, which is 10 years. You have to live somewhere for 10 years. The person owning it has to be on notice for 10 years and do nothing about it. So actual squatters cases are so rare as to not exist. In the vast majority of squatting cases, the owner can simply go to court, file for an ejection. The squatters will be out in 2 months, and that's the end of the case. You can't get them out immediately. So I guess that's kind of how it exists in a certain sense. If you call the police, if they don't recognize it as a trespass, if they see, okay, the person is actually living here, they didn't just break in, the police will refer you to, it's a civil matter, you have to go to court. But the owner can go to court. It's a very easy process. If you can prove ownership and that person in there doesn't have ownership, the only time frame that the alleged squatter would have would be the amount of time that it takes for the court date to be scheduled. Once you're there, you're going to be out in about a month.
Thank you. Mr. Larry, you are up. So a couple questions for you. So in your experience, how do you get buy-in from other municipal officials, administrators, council people, other investigators at the local level to enforce hoarding-related matters in the non-traditional manner? And do you usually share personal stories with the complaints, or would that be a breach of confidentiality in your opinion?
I think if you're looking to get buy-in from your municipal partners, that you have to start long before the bell rings. It's a gradual process. You have to prove to them. You have to prove to them, number one, that you know what you're doing and you're a fairly competent professional. You have to prove to them that you don't want to just use them as a dumping ground for anything that you don't want to deal with. And they have to prove to you that they don't want to use you as a dumping ground for anything that they don't want to have to deal with as well. Once you have a working relationship with them and you know them, it's a lot easier to call the guy up and say, hey, Chris, man, how you doing? Or, hey, Al Scott, look, I got an issue here. What do you think? You want to meet me over there? Can we go take a look and put our heads together and see what we can figure out? That's the gold standard in my eyes. If you call them up and say, hi, I'm Larry Cassica from the Monmouth County Health Department, and we have an issue at 123 Main Street, and I'm requesting your assistance. The ones that have buy-in already will be there. The ones that don't, you haven't done a whole lot to encourage them to jump into the boat with you. So I think the answer is you got to start forging those relationships and those partnerships today, long before you actually need to call them up. That's what I got.
Yeah, thank you. So I think Larry brings up a broader topic about cooperation, communication, and developing those relationships and networking. I know in public health, we talk a lot about that, but this is one example of that, where you need to engage your local partners, your state partners, and develop a rapport with them. It makes your life a lot easier, and really looking at the situation and getting things done. If you're just meeting somebody for the first time, it's probably going to make it a little tougher if you don't know that individual. So I think the moral of that story is network now. Don't wait till an emergency arises. We can apply that to anything across the spectrum of public health. And, I always tell my staff and folks in Monmouth County that you need to go out, you need to know your town partners, we need to know our community stakeholders. We have Monmouth Acts that really collaborates and works, tries to bring the nonprofit and the public sector together. And on that note, we did have a question. Now I probably won't be able to find it, but we did have a question about Monmouth Acts. Here we go. Sorry, just sorting through my index cards here. And I'm going to ask somebody from Monmouth Acts to answer this question. I'm looking at Candace. How does Monmouth County Acts work? Is it affiliated with intergenerational services? And really, if you can just talk about the process itself, what Monmouth Acts is, Candace. Candace Sparks is our coordinator for Monmouth Acts, and she does a tremendous job. I try to get Nicole, but she's,
Oh, you want me over here? Get my good side? So Monmouth Acts is really a public-private partnership. So it's a partnership between the county and our nonprofits, primarily throughout the county, to assist residents. So if you'll notice in the front of your booklet that they gave you, a phone number for Monmouth Acts, that is a resource that you can share with your residents, with your clients that you serve. And one of the things, we do a lot of things, but one of the things that makes us visible in the community is having a phone number where people can call to ask for help. They may not know, they know what they need. And so if you are working with a client whom you are unable to assist with a particular need, maybe it's just not what you do, you can have them call us, and we have social workers that can answer that. One of them is bilingual, speaks Spanish, and her supervisor is also bilingual and speaks Spanish. So those individuals can be served. So feel free to share that number, put it out, paste it everywhere. So the other thing that we do is we have an advisory council, and we work with the nonprofits. We talk about needs that are going on in the community. We have established hubs, 5 of them. They cover the lifespan, and we work to address the need. So whether it's housing, we can't build housing, but we can talk about working together to keep people in the homes that they have. We have behavioral health concerns that we talk to. We have sub-work groups even that look at food security and how that we can provide better access to food. So these are things that these communities work on, and that our nonprofits work on as a group, as a community, so that we can address the needs. So we really do call it No Wrong Door. They can call us. They can call many of our nonprofits. They know how to reach us, and we can help direct residents to a lot of the help that they need. So these individuals up here are resources for us. We have a new resource. Thank you. So for those that may be in need of a variety of help, just call us. We've gotten some strange calls, and we've been able to help those residents. So I hope I answered the question. Yes, ma'am. No, so our resources, yes, are for Monmouth County residents. We have the phone numbers to some agencies in other counties, and some of our nonprofits do work in other counties, but primarily we are focused on Monmouth County, yes.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you very much. So that I was going to mention that. Thank you. Yes, this is a Monmouth County centric information guide. However, with that being said, if you are from another county, I know we have a lot of public health folks from different counties across the state. If this is something that you are interested in, I'm sure that our folks here in Monmouth wouldn't mind sharing the information on how Monmouth Acts got off the ground. I was in one of the original working groups when this concept was coming together many, many years ago. It's taken years to get to this point, but I commend our director, Peter Boyden, and all the deputies under him, and the division directors where the Division of Health falls under, the Department of Health and Human Services. It's been a real collaborative effort in regards to getting Monmouth Acts off the ground. It's really been helpful in streamlining a lot of the services and supports that we have. Like Candace said, we can't build housing, but we can coordinate with all the housing groups and folks to make it easier for our residents in Monmouth County to get to the people they need to talk to. So thank you very much. Next, I'm going to punt this to Ms. Gerald. In your experience as a nurse, what does a successful multidisciplinary response for hoarding look like in your experience?
First, I want to say I am a nurse, and our entire staff, we will make you do whatever we need you to do. We are the ones that go out and whine until you give in to us. We just had a house, and one of our nurses talked this man into who was not going to leave this house going to the hospital. I think that's the first thing, is it's all by the approach. You really do have to go in softly. Unlike Larry, we have the soft side. He has the enforcement side. So together, this really works well. And then we plead with each group. We don't really have a lot of issues getting them to come out in Monmouth County. I have to say we're very fortunate being here. And pretty much all the players are all in once we have an issue.
Thank you very much. So Sounds like a little bit of good cop, bad cop, I'm hearing. So, okay.
Every toolbox needs a hammer.
Yes. Yes. Or a softer rubber mallet. Another sort of Monmouth County question. I can tackle this, and then if anybody else would like to add anything, please feel free. What did it take to create the Monmouth County Hoarding Task Force? Who are the key players needed to make this work? So unfortunately, our director had to leave for another meeting. He's running the meetings all the time. So, but I wanted to provide him credit. Actually, it was I want to say it was at one of our Monmouth Acts meetings. Candace, that we were, the division directors were up. I was doing a presentation, and I'm sorry, my brain is gone. I can't remember what Healthy Homes. Thank you. See, thank you, Nicole. So I was doing a Healthy Homes presentation, and the topic of hoarding came up. Surprise, surprise. So we started talking, my counterpart in behavioral health, and a lot of the division directors were talking about hoarding. And the director said, I'm hearing this is a problem, and we're going to band together and sort of try to tackle this. So that was sort of the emphasis, the beginning of how we started this hoarding task force. It's all the division directors meeting initially, and then onboarding a lot of the community groups that are involved with this. We have this great resource guide that has come out of it. And obviously this forum was one of our activities related to the hoarding forum, because this can touch everybody in different ways. If you've ever been involved with a neighbor, a friend, a colleague, a family member, parents that have hoarding disorder, it can take a huge mental toll on the individuals. The families have been ripped apart by hoarding disorder. I've seen it time and time again, and I'm sure all the panelists up here can tell you, and I know Brandon alluded to it, that families have been estranged. Children stop talking to their parents, and it's beyond just the stuff. It takes a huge emotional, mental toll on families that are involved in hoarding. So I think we have to, and I think some of us are guilty of it on the enforcement side because of our training and experience. But these people are human beings. I can tell you, and hoping Brandon can back me up here on this, that most of those people don't want to live like that. So.
No, I would say so, that majority of the people understand that, their living situations affecting their lives. Starting this company in New England and Massachusetts, where a lot of my clients are incredibly intelligent. I mean, we're talking about Harvard graduates, MIT. My clients are like, Brandon, do you think you're smarter than me? I'm like, look at your darn wall. No, I don't think I'm smarter than you. These people are really savvy, and they're really resourceful. And it can be frustrating for a lot of you guys to see these people that are cognitively intact, but yet make these decisions that you just, for all likeliness of it, can't really make heads or tails of, So it does become frustrating. I think the one thing that I would say in all the years that we've been doing this, is the only thing that really works is compassion. You can be angry, you can be frustrated, you can do a number of different things, but until you start caring in the way that you can honestly look at their situation from a different lens, none of these situations are ever gonna fix themselves. I've seen the sons, the daughters come in and argue with their mom and dad. I've seen a number of different people who come in with good hearts, but don't seem to go anywhere, because people in these situations, they can sense immediately when you walk into their environment if you're judging them. that first 5 or 10 seconds, the moment you cross that threshold, there's a stare down between you and them. And in that moment, you can win them or you can lose them. And in that moment, when I would walk in and I would look at them and they would look at me, they want to see my initial reaction. Don't do what comes natural. Do what comes unnatural. Compassion. And at that moment, you're going to win their trust. You're going to win their ability to feel comfortable with you. And in that moment, that's when the things change. It becomes a much more different outcome than you can ever imagine. Than when you go in there, like what you guys mentioned earlier with the code enforcement, and you say, we're here to do this, that, and the third, you become an enemy. And I think one thing I can say about the group of people in this room is that everyone in here seems to be really compassionate. So I think that's going to be easy. And if it comes natural to you so far, that explains why you guys are building this task force and why you're moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Greatly well said. Thank you. So I think that the moral of that story is that we should all be like nurses, right? Compassionate and caring. So thank you very much, Brandon. That was powerful stuff. So just looking over my index cards. I have one maybe for everybody. Interesting, more of a comment about panelists' commitment to support the victims of hoarding. I think, that you can look at it two ways. It just doesn't affect the person with hoarding disorder, but it affects everybody, as we sort of explained. So I think, I'm not going to speak for the panelists, but I think we're all up here for the right reasons and understand that it's not just the individual with the disorder. It's also their friends, their neighbors, their families that are very affected by this and traumatized by it. Any other thoughts or comments surrounding the individuals who are affected?
No, just speaking from the very specific perspective of legal representation, it's kind of challenging because, especially if you come in, your client is typically going to be the person with the disorder, and the antagonist may be related to them. And it's very challenging as an attorney trying to balance the fact that, our job first and foremost is to represent the interest of our client, but is their interest in maintaining their home, or is their interest in maintaining their relationship? Is their interest in maintaining their hoard? You don't want to help them down that route. That's not really what the rule that we're really there to do. But if preserving their housing means sacrificing, something that they're not willing to give up, it's a genuine ethical challenge that we deal with in these circumstances. And it's doubly true when you realize that your client might be the problem. There may be other people in their building, other people in their community who might be your client tomorrow, might be from the same population that legal services exists to help. And your client is the one who is putting bed bugs, putting roaches, putting rats, putting mold into their houses. And there's not, part of the challenge, frankly, of being an attorney is that there is not an answer here. It's one of those things where it is a balance, and it's a careful one for us to try to get right. But I think it just speaks to the broader complexity of these disorders, and also, frankly, how limited we are in terms of being able. We might be able to stop the eviction, but that doesn't solve the problem. We're aware of that, but it's something that we do struggle with.
I'd like to piggyback on that. I've seen a lot of scenarios come to life, and positive and the negative ones. I like to share a story of a project that we did in New Hampshire. It was a project that we went into, and it was noticeable hoarding from the exterior perimeter. And obviously the town was aware of what was going on in that particular situation. The client, hired us privately to come in and offer the service. And as we were working on getting the place cleaned up, a miracle happened. Actually, the neighbors on that block came over one at a time and said, listen, we had been knowing what was going on over here for quite some time, but we didn't want to embarrass Mrs. Smith. I'll use Mrs. Smith. And we all want to help. And on that block, I had 3 neighbors come in and actually help our team. These situations are a lot more common, and people really do want to do something, but they draw the line between privacy and making sure they respect people's right to live and be the way they want to be, between, okay, I'm in a condo association and now I'm infested with bed bugs or roaches or whatever the case may be, or I own a home and now I need to put my house on the market. I think communities that can stand up and work together and be able to knock on these doors or contact the towns and the cities and say, listen, I'm not trying to snitch, quote unquote, but I do see that Mrs. Smith or Mr. Brown is in some trouble and we want to know what we can do to help. Those are the towns, those are the situations and the circumstances where the community wins.
Thank you. So the old, it takes a village. So I think that's where Brandon is alluding to. And I think that is a good example of a situation that the community came together to help this individual. They care about the neighbors, they care about their community, and they want to help that person. It really, you know, that person really is to the point when they have a hoarding disorder where it's hard for them to help themselves. So it takes the community to really lift that person up and help them address the situation. Larry, did you have something?
I just have a couple of respectful observations. Part of the problem that you have is that it's the person who's experiencing the disorder. If they refuse help, then a lot of your options and a lot of your social work and resources and stuff kind of goes down the drain until they're willing to let you in. You know, I can go out there and I can talk to you and I can be compassionate and I can be warm and fuzzy and all that stuff, as you can tell. But if they are not willing to let you in, you're kind of running into a brick wall. The other issue that we were talking about as well, and I'd be interested in your, because I was impressed by your, is when you get into condos and landlord tenants and that sort of stuff, it's always been my feeling, and like I said it before, you can live however you want until your actions impede me from living however I want. The fact that you and I, you're a landlord and I'm a tenant, we have a lease, which is a contract. And the contract says that you as the landlord are going to provide certain things like habitable structure and heat and the windows and stuff like that. And I as the tenant also have some reasonable expectations in that I'm not going to take a hammer to your walls and I'm not going to, trash the place and all that sort of stuff. And once you run into those issues, isn't that a breach of contract almost? And isn't that actionable?
Yes, it is. And that was, during my presentation talking about kind of the eviction process, the way that New Jersey eviction law is set up is that depending on kind of the severity of what's alleged, sometimes the landlord has to give a warning, which is a notice to cease. If it's so bad that it's clear that there's immediate damage akin to taking a hammer, like you said, to the walls, then they don't need to send a warning letter, but they do need to send a vacate demand before they can file for eviction. But that is, fundamentally, that's what eviction court is. It is the resolution of breaches of the lease contract. Part of, though, I will say, and this is, to be clear, as a tenant's attorney, one of the frustrations of eviction court is that if, in like all court, most things get settled. That's true for civil, that's true for criminal. Most cases just get settled because it makes the most sense. The court doesn't have enough time to hear everything, all the reasons. above. But one of the frustrations of eviction court is that if you do not settle your case and you go in front of the judge, there's only one of two outcomes. The tenant remains or the tenant is evicted. There's no complexity. There's no flexible solution. There's no, all right, I'm going to order the tenant to clean up everything within 45 days. The landlord-tenant judges in New Jersey have no jurisdiction to do, no power to do this at all. There's a limited line of things where the landlord is not doing repairs, and the tenant has properly withheld their rent or paid for repairs, followed procedure. There's a very specific area where the judge can order, but even then those orders are effectively limited to a change in the rent structure until the tenant certifies something. Outside of that, there's no flexibility, there's no nothing. So, the part of the problem I would say is actually that, so there is a venue, there's a very active venue for these breaches of contract, but the remedies within this venue, unless you settle, are hard, black and white, up and down. The judges don't have the flexibility that they need. I think that there's probably a universe of problems that would result if they got that flexibility that I haven't spent the time imagining. But that's one of the constrictions is that, there is a remedy, but it is so limited and rigid that I don't think it really addresses, especially what we're talking about today.
Thanks, Chris. So now it's the caring and compassionate nurses' turn. If you could provide us maybe an example of, the families that our staff and you have spoken with, where they're at their wits' end and they don't know what to do, and how you guide them and how you have advised them. Because we know, as we talked about through this workshop, that it's not just the individual with the hoarding disorder. It's the neighbors, it's the community, it's the families. So maybe you can talk about some of those experiences that you have had and how you have helped guide those family members that they just don't know what to do anymore.
So we did have a very affluent family. And part of what the health department does is lead inspections if a child has an elevated blood lead level. And when we went into the house, we were shocked, and I'm sure it showed, unfortunately, that there was so much hoarding. There was only 2 rooms that we could really get through. The rest, the clothes were piled straight to the ceiling. Well, as we were there a little bit longer, we now have 4 teenagers that came home. And the dynamic was just absolutely heart-wrenching. And I think the one thing that we all learned from that is what's our approach going to be? The hammer had to still do the inspection, but as a family dynamic, it was so dysfunctional when you actually spent some time with them. These kids didn't want to be bringing people home. They were embarrassed going to school because they couldn't really take showers. So it was a whole dynamic and took a lot to get everybody back together. But I think the one thing that we did learn out of it was you can't go in telling them what to do. We really needed to go in and say, what do you need? How can you help us get to that we can do this inspection? I worked with somebody who was very bright, who really knew exactly what to say with that and was able to get them to do a small amount at a time. Then we went upstairs and we couldn't get past the hole in the floor. We're talking a multi-million-dollar house. We're not talking about some, family with no means. And yet they had no ability to get out of the situation that they had gotten themselves into. So I think the lessons learned for us were a little bit at a time. Let them start out by telling you what you need. The more times we got there, the other thing is you have to have more than one visit. You have to develop some trust. And that's not always easy to do. This family really did want to get out of this situation. So we did spend a lot of time with them. It took a long time. It probably took 6 months to resolve. And we had a lot of support from all the other agencies. They had all agreed to go to counseling. The local code enforcement and fire actually gave them some extended time to provide all the different aspects and code things they needed to do.
Thank you. And then that just circles back around to what one of the major themes is the communication and cooperation amongst the various agencies. You know, Brandon's done hundreds of these, and he's right. The first few minutes will make or break you with developing that relationship. If you go in, like Larry has said, you know, I'm the inspector, and you know, I'm gonna kick you out of your house, you're done. You have to go in with a command, and I know as an REHS, that's not always our training. How many REHSs in the room? Okay, all right. We're on the enforcement side, but we also have to learn compassion for our fellow human beings. You don't lead with enforcement. And I've learned that through my 25-year plus career as an REHS and a health officer. So thank you very much. We have a couple more minutes. I'd like to take, if there's any other burning questions from the audience, maybe we'll take another one or two.
If someone adamantly does not want to clean up or address their hoarding issue, what are the options? What options are left?
So
Single family or multifamily?
single family.
You already know the answer. You already know the answer. The answer is that there are no options. You know, all you can do, you can give them notices for the outside of the house. You can cause that to be addressed, if not abated. Wait, now we're getting horrible. Okay, do they have kids?
Yeah.
You know, are we going to call, what is it?
DCP.
DCCP? I'm hesitant
Close
to
enough.
do that sort of thing. That's now we're getting deep. You know, if we're calling DCCP to take their kids away, I mean, holy smokes.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty radical move. As far as the inside goes, it all depends how crazy you want to get, I guess, you know. I mean, you could, don't tell anybody. You could come along and give them notices of violation for the inside of their house, which are not going to be enforceable, really. If they call this guy, I'm smoked. But you could try to threaten them. You could try to encourage them. You could try to cajole them. You know, like I said before, the issue is if they're not willing to accept help, then all of our Monmouth acts and all that stuff is kind of, you know, so are there levers that you can pull? Do we have family members? Can we talk to them? Maybe one of those people can ask them for, you know, can convince them to ask for help. Maybe you can make friends with them a little bit and say, hey, you know, I mean, give these, she's awfully nice. Why don't you give her a call and see what they have to say? It's not going to kill you. You're not going to commit to anything. Maybe you're going to learn something good. It could happen. Give him a call. And
I think,
all I got.
thanks, Larry. You want to go ahead, Brandon?
No, I have an interesting story. I once got a hoarding call from some town officials in Massachusetts once. And they said they had a peculiar case with a client that came into their town out of nowhere. Nobody knew who she was. No one knew where she came from. But she was a severe hoarder, and the exterior of her property began to hoard in the town, the neighbors. Long story short, they condemned her home and moved her into a hotel. She went into the hotel, started hoarding inside the hotel. Then she went back to another hotel, hoarded at a second hotel. Then she went back to her home and bought like $100,000 Winnebago. And she was tying the power in from the Winnebago into the actual home. They shut the water off. They shut the electricity off. Then it contacted the mortgage company and said she must have a mortgage on this property. Maybe if we contact the mortgage company, we can urge them to do something about, putting a lien on the property to force her to do something. To their surprise, she paid $775,000 for her house cash. So she didn't own a mortgage. So then they dug a little deeper and they're like, who the heck is this darn lady? Where did she come from? Well, it turns out after I attempted to call her daughter, and her daughter, basically in so many words just asked me, did she die yet? So I can get my inheritance. That didn't work. They dug a little deep and come to find out the lady was an heir to one of the largest tobacco companies in the world. And she was worth over $100 million. So yeah, sometimes those more complicated cases when they got money makes it a little bit more challenging for you to be able to fix these situations, because if they're in Section 8 or subsidized housing, or if there's a landlord, you can threaten tenancy. And then obviously you got a lawyer like this to fight with. But in cases where they have the means, it makes it a little bit more complicated. In her case, you asked what happened, how did this turn out? Well, she got a boyfriend, ironically, and the boyfriend suggested that they move, and she left. And that's how it fixed itself. So it can be very complicated at times, and unfortunately, when there's resources.
Thank you, Brandon. That was great. We're going to end it there. We're about on time. Certainly, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. I'd like to thank our panel. I have a few closing remarks. As we bring today's forum to a close, I want to thank you all, our speakers, our panelists, and each of you in the audience for your time, your attention, your commitment to working together on this very complex and often hidden issue. Today, we heard an overview of hoarding disorder, how it affects individuals and families, the legal and ethical challenges that arise when balancing individual rights with community safety, how public health and code enforcement professionals approach cases in the field, and a powerful real-world case study that showed what's possible when multiple agencies unite behind a coordinated response. Our panel discussion brought it all together, highlighting the importance of co-response models, the challenges around housing, and the need to create systems that support, not stigmatize, those experiencing hoarding. The key takeaway: connection is the solution. This work cannot happen in silos. It requires mental health professionals, legal advocates, code officials, housing authorities, and social services to operate as a team, sharing information, leveraging each other's strengths, and centering the person at the heart of each case. As we wrap up, please take a few minutes to complete the evaluation forms. Your feedback helps us shape future trainings and forums. Make use of the resources available at the back of the room or shared digitally at the event. And we're going to look to pass out the slides or email the slides. And we encourage you to stay network and continue these conversations. This is where lasting partnerships begin. Thank you again for being part of today's forum and workshop, and for everything you do to make our communities healthier, safer, and more supportive places for everyone. Thank you.